Okay, next in this series, starting points. What I call the third circle, what God's people do together, what the followers of Jesus do together, what Christians do together. If you take a look at what I'm displaying up here, you'll see there's a lot of Bible passages, so I'm not just making these things up. These are things that are easily found throughout the stories of the early church and earlier parts of the Bible as well, but I think I'm drawing all these things from except for one from the stories of Jesus, and especially from the later parts of the Bible, the letters that were circulating among the churches. All right, so what Christians work on together, as I've mentioned in a previous video, this all boils down to one basic thing: be part of a church. Be part of a church. Some people think, oh, I can worship God just as well by going out into the woods. Is that really true? I mean, yes, when I go out into the woods, I've got a feeling of awe. If I'm looking out across the ocean or I'm seeing some spectacular sunset. So in that sense, I'm worshiping God. But there's not a lot of content there. There's a sense of awe about God and about the beauty of the world and the power of it. And that reflects God's nature, God's beauty, God's power, God's grace. But it doesn't tell me a whole lot of other things. It's when we're part of a church community and we're regularly involved in it, all kinds of things are going to open up. We're going to learn all kinds of things, and our perspective on God and life and on each other is going to become incredibly, incredibly rich. So be part of a church, and I've got a few Bible passages that you can see that are listed there. Secondly, mission. So we are called, if we're a part of a church, to be a community that's on a mission. It's not just about pleasing ourselves or hunkering down in a safe community until Jesus returns, but we're on a mission to share the story of Jesus Christ, to generate more followers, because, well, it's very necessary, because without God, life falls apart. Without God, life falls apart. People are able sometimes to mitigate that and to keep their lives together in some fashion, but ultimately, whether we're looking at the life of a nation or the life of a community or the life of an individual or a family, we need to draw people into life with Jesus Christ, because that's where real life is. And so we're on a mission to make disciples and to grow the movement and to baptize. Jesus said very simply to his disciples at one point, go out into the world, teaching them all the things I taught you, and baptizing them. So we're on a mission to make disciples and to baptize. Thirdly, worship. If you're part of a church, worship is going to be part of the deal. Sometimes when people step into a worship service, and this is very likely to happen to you if you haven't been in a worship service for a while, or have never been, you might step into a church. You might not like it at first. Don't worry about it. There's all kinds of things that people don't like, but they do them anyway because they're important to do. And that's the thing about being part of a church. I believe that you will grow to like it, and it's okay to do a little bit of sampling of churches to find the one that's going to fit best for you. Be part of a church where you feel a bit welcome, where you understand what's going on, and where people are caring. But be part of a church and worship regularly. Fourth, Bible study. If you're part of a church, that's going to be automatic. Sometimes there are Bible study groups, small groups you can plug into. But if there's regular worship, let's say it's Sunday mornings, which is quite typical, always there's going to be somebody leading the event, and the person is going to have something to say, and it's supposed to be meaningful, and it's supposed to be grounded in the Bible. So Bible study is automatically a part of church life. Next, arts. God's people are artistic people. You're always going to hear music in worship services, many different kinds. You're going to see visual things, stained glass maybe. I think the church, the Vatican, the Roman Catholic Church, is probably the largest patron of the arts over the last 2,000 years. Maybe not the biggest one today, but historically has been the biggest patron of the arts and might still be. And also in a church, you're going to hear music, readings, speaking, drawing, painting, these kinds of things. The arts are a big part of life as God's people. By the way, Psalm 150 in the Bible, Psalm 150. Take a look if you need some biblical foundations for thinking about God's people and the arts. Next, special days of the year. The three biggest ones are Christmas, the celebration of Jesus' birth, Good Friday, the celebration of Jesus' death for your and my sins. That's why it's called Good Friday. And Easter, maybe the most important of all, the celebration of the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead. It's not about Easter eggs or Easter bunnies. Easter is about the resurrection of Jesus Christ. Now, of course, Jesus' birth, his death, and his resurrection can be celebrated any time of the year. But depending on where you live, which part of the world, those three holidays can be convenient times to really focus on them. But, of course, remember them and celebrate them other times of the year also. The Lord's Supper. Jesus, sometimes called the Last Supper. Jesus provided it for his disciples the night before his death. So churches do it everywhere. Sometimes it's called the Eucharist. Sometimes it's called communion. It's done sometimes rarely, maybe once a year. Many churches, half a dozen times a year, 3 or 4, sometimes once a month. In Catholic and other churches like that, maybe every day, the Eucharist. So, but anyway, it's reliving that night that Jesus gave his disciples the Last Supper and what that all meant and the words he said. It's reliving the time of Jesus' sacrificial death. Next, prayer is an automatic part of life as God's people. And if you're part of a church, even a small group of people, even just meeting one-on-one with say, a pastor or priest, prayer is just going to be a natural thing that happens. Then also, supporting leaders or become one. We need leaders in the church. Maybe God's calling you to become one. Think about it. And if you're not going to lead something, then God's going to be calling you to support a leader or the leaders of your church community. It's really interesting because leaders in church communities are often not professionals. They're often not paid. They're often not trained also, although they are often taught by example. But it's something like, I once heard somebody say, wherever the church is, in the church, look out for what the little guy can do. Look out for what the little person can do. A small person can do great things. Think about, if you like Lord of the Rings, think about Frodo. He's not a trained warrior, but he does great things. And he's in that sense kind of his character lines up with the biblical picture of who God's people are. In many respects, small, ordinary people, but able to do great things because, well, God gives us the opportunity to do so. And so think on that. Supporting leaders or becoming one, and even if you're not one, you're going to be able to do great things like pray and help others. Education. God's people are learning people. One reason for that is very simple. The faith is grounded very much, it's grounded in the person of Jesus Christ. But we understand who Jesus is through a collection of writings. They're all found in the Bible. So we are reading people. We learn how to read and write and to think. And also we love history because the faith is about things that happened, things that really happened, and also church history, life of God's people over thousands of years. So God's people are learning people. Last couple things. Caring for our neighbors nearby and far away. I mentioned mission, but also mission trips. You might find that in your town or city that there are a number of food banks or crisis shelters. I am pretty sure that if you look into the background to any of them, almost for sure, they're almost all started by churches. So some of them may not have official connection with churches any longer, but many of them do. So caring for neighbors, crisis shelter, providing food, World Vision, many other Christian humanitarian organizations are out there. Caring for our neighbors is a powerful tradition that has been embedded in our whole world by the church. Think on that. I mean, it's not that other people can't be caring, but it's especially the church that has made a great virtue of caring for neighbors and generating entire organizations, large ones, to bring care and help to other people. So caring for our neighbors nearby and far away, missions trips, and finally, I like to think that, well, I think you find this in the biblical stories, the church is about food, fun, and friends. Well, this is a very short little bit. The next section of Starting Points, and it's just to ask the question, where do you fit in? Where do you see yourself fitting in? If you're just getting started with the church, getting to know some of God's people, hearing all the things I'm trying to communicate, if this is all kind of newish, I would guess some of it is, maybe not all of it is, but you may be wondering, well, where do I fit in? I'm not, you may think, well, I'm not a great public speaker. I don't have a lot of influence. Don't worry about that too much. Don't worry about that too much. Stay plugged into the community of God's people that you've been starting to connect with, and sometimes people say to me, well, Mike, all I can really do is show up. Well, that's fantastic. Showing up is the doorway to all kinds of things that will happen, because when you show up in church regularly, when you show up meeting with God's people, you're going to hear about all kinds of things, you're going to see all kinds of things, and I think that God's going to take some of that and grab your attention with it. He's going to draw you into something. Maybe you're a musician and you want to write songs, or maybe you want to be part of a worship team. Maybe you're kind of a natural born leader and you want to lead. You're going to have to learn just exactly what leadership in a church looks like, but it won't take that long. And you should find yourself on your way. Any church, maybe you've got a gift of teaching. Most churches have all kinds of curriculum materials, either formal or informal ones, ways to teach people, whether they're very young kids or whether they're teens or whether they're older. Bible studies. There's going to be something for you to do. Sometimes people like to do hands-on stuff. So helping people find shelter, furniture banks, food banks. I've known many people to help build buildings, hammer and nails, for people who are without homes. So there's a lot that can be done. Contributing money, very important, because the way that God has set up our world, as far as I can tell, money is just part of how we work at exchanging goods. So contributing money is important. So a lot of things that you're going to be able to do. Think about them and maybe complete this sentence. Here is what I think God might be wanting me to do as one of his